You're listening to a special presentation from Night of the Living podcast, Zoned Out, the Twilight Zone revisited with Freddy and Joe. Oh, dear Joe. How you doing?
Long live Freddie Morris.
Probably not. I just had a fruit roll up. So, like a child.
As long as the cellophane was separated from the back of it, you're probably okay.
That's true. Fruit leather, as they call it. In the olden times, they would have called it fruit leather. What was the name of this episode again? The long live.
Long live Walter Jameson.
Thank you. I didn't have it right in front of me, so I'm like, what the fuck?
That's the only reason I did have it. So I was like, oh yeah, it's right here. I can say that.
Thank you, Joe. You're looking out for me. Original air date, March 18, 1960. First of two, directed by Anton Leader. Anton Leader was a director for TV. He did The Virginian, which was the Western show, Star Trek, the original series, and Get Smart, which connects to last week's episode. One of the writers of Get Smart was on that. He also directed do you remember The Children of the Damned? The sequel? I think it was a sequel to Village of the Damned.
No, I've never watched either of those movies. The Village of the Damned was the kids with the white eyes and all that stuff. Okay. Yeah, no.
They're pretty good. He's going to return to direct another episode called The Midnight Sun. This is the third of 22 episodes written by Charles Beaumont. We've already covered Perchance to Dream and Elegy. George T. Clemens returns as cinematographer after we had a guest cinematographer last time on the episode A World of Difference.
Had a little bit of a feel last week that we talked about the filming, couple of different shots that were a little different.
Yeah, it stands out. You can tell, I think, if you've been watching the show and all of a sudden you watch that last week's episode, it felt different for sure. And then this week feels like it's kind of a return to form visually.
Yeah, even if you're not a film or a cinematographer type person, you can kind of notice little pieces of something just feels different. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So I didn't put the total number of the cast down this time. I just goofed there. There's no music credits.
I think it was 8.
Yeah. 8? Yeah, it was pretty small.
I'm just looking at the IMDb for that.
Thanks. We have Professor Walter Jameson, is how we're introduced to this character, played by Kevin McCarthy. Excuse me. This is his only appearance on the Twilight Zone. However, he does turn up in the movie, the 80s movie, in this segment. He's Uncle Walt. You remember It's a Good Life, which is a retelling of the Billy Mooney one? Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so for those who don't know Kevin McCarthy by name, he always stands out to me as that like he's got a very distinctive face. He kind of reminds me of a Wayne Knight type, not Wayne Knight. Who am I thinking of? The guy with Ted Knight.
Ted
type
Knight.
Character.
Oh, definitely. Him and Ted Knight have a lot of similarities.
Yeah, that kind of, well, we're waiting. I will never get over Ted Knight with that. But I think I remember him from was he in the Weird Al movie?
Yeah, he was
Maybe
in
not.
UHF.
UHF,
he was
the bad guy.
Yeah, the station manager, who he goes on that tirade at the end of the movie, which is great. That's classic Kevin McCarthy. You don't get that in this episode of The Twilight Zone, but he can play sweaty and desperate like nobody's business. Like if you watch the original Invasion of the Body Snatchers, he is just friggin' awesome in that. He's in Piranha, tons of stuff. Him and He and Dick Miller were in a bunch of different stuff together. So if you're a Joe Dante fan, there's a lot of connections there to Kevin McCarthy and Dick Miller and all those guys.
As Madonna would say, he gives good face.
Yes, he does. He was a strong proponent of the Method School of Acting and a founding member of the Actors Studio. We kind of mentioned that last week too. So he was into it. He has a buddy, another professor, Sam Kittredge. He's a French-born character actor, Edgar Stelly, older guy, didn't have a lot of data on him. Then a character, Lorette Bowen, Lorette Bowen, is the older lady. That's a comedic actress, Estelle Winwood. She was in The Producers, Murder by Death, Darby O'Gill and the Little People. Basically everything that was on, like in syndication. If you're a kid of the 80s, stuff you might have seen in an afternoon matinee.
She's got a very interesting look in this. I mean, she's an older woman, but her almost, okay, I want to be careful with this. She just, I'm gonna make a connection here that may be inappropriate, but I'm just gonna say it anyway. She kind of looks like Yoda,
Sure.
the same way that my grandma used to look like Yoda. And I love my grandma, but she kind of used to look like Yoda.
I get it.
So.
And I love, we have a lot of, it doesn't mean she's ugly. It just means that there's something there that reminds you of Yoda.
Well, it's the big, beautiful eyes and like kind of like that, the just the face shape. I don't know. There's something about it. So.
The little cane and the burlap robe.
The way she levitated things with her 3 fingers. You know? Okay. So forgive me. Just there's the Yoda connection there. You'll see it if you see the close-ups. Anyway,
it makes you want to go back and look. The last of the featured players here is the character Susanna Heath, played by Dodie. I wrote Dodie Heath. That can't be right.
Dodie Heath. That is Susanna Kittredge, played by Dodie Heath. Yes.
Her last name is Kittredge. I wrote down Heath as the character's last name too.
Oh,
that makes more sense because she's like the daughter of the Sam Kittredge character. I never blinked once at that.
It's credited as Dodie, Dody, but apparently her actual name was Dodie. So I don't know.
She was in Brigadoon. Seconds. If you ever seen that, that's a very Twilight Zone-ish movie about a guy who gets like a whole different face in life. And
face off?
Face. I want to take his face off. And she was in The Diary of Anne Frank. She is, Professor Jameson's half his age girlfriend / fiance,
and the daughter of Sam Kittredge. Professor Sam Kittredge.
Yeah. So you want to jump into the story?
Sure. So starts out and there's a person that we're at a college campus. You can tell by the people dressed in suits skipping up the stairs, which I don't know. There was something that stuck out to me is there's like 3 guys in suits and they're in unison going up these stairs and like doom, 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 do that whole kind of skip up them. And you've got the swelling strings and you can tell this is very much like there's something about that in movies that they just nail every time where it's like, oh, clearly we're on a prestigious college campus because it's like, and I don't know, you know more about that, Freddie, about the music side of that.
Yeah.
But like, what is it about? Is it like certain keys that people hit or the certain sound that people associate with
horns, pomp? Like horns are usually the key to that thing. That
okay,
that
so not
vibe
strings,
you're
it's
going
horns.
for. Sometimes strings too. I mean, it really depends. Like if you're like trying to get across something that's regal, you usually go with horns. If you're going a little softer, a little more romantic, you bring in strings.
Okay.
I mean, that's traditionally, there's no right or wrong answer to it. But what you're talking about, I think, is the tradition of you either, when you shoot the exterior of a university, you're either you're establishing immediately if this is a party school or not by either playing rock music or or new wave music, or if it's a horn heavy classical, you're looking at like your Hogwarts and your Yales.
That's freaking awesome that you just outlined that so articulately. It's
Thank
like,
you.
is it flannel t-shirts, hacky sacks, and frisbees with rock music,
or shoulder
is it
patches
suits with horns? Yeah, right.
You gotta have the shoulder patches on the blazers.
An ivy, and somebody's got a pipe. Yeah,
definitely. And there's the pipe appears. Yeah.
Yes, of course. So I love that we digressed to like the first 4 seconds. So it shows that, and then it goes into a lecture hall. And we see our main character, Mr. Professor Walt Jameson, and it says, "You're looking at Act 1, Scene 1 of a nightmare, one not restricted to witching hours of dark, rain-swept nights. Professor Walter Jameson, popular beyond words, who talks of a past as if it were the present, who conjures up the dead as if they were alive." And then it cuts to an elderly guy who we later get introduced as, in the second half of the VO voiceover. In the view of this man, Professor Samuel Kittredge, Walter Jameson has access to knowledge that couldn't come out of a volume of history, but rather from a book on black magic, which is to say that this nightmare begins at noon. And I don't get that reference.
Nightmare at Noon would be a good title for another episode.
Right? It
Yeah.
would. So, yeah. Basically, we're seeing a lecture. Right after the lecture, Walter Jameson, who's talking about the Civil War, and he's super popular apparently. And this other professor who knows him, we find out later really well, is like, hey, that was a really interesting lecture. Can I see your reference that he drew from, which was he read from a diary of a character in there. And the Jameson character says, yeah, here, you can see it. And so he shows him this old diary, a Civil War diary, where he's just like, carrying it around in his backpack, because that's normal. And so the Kittredge takes it and looks through it, and he's like, can I borrow this? And Jameson's like, no. Do you remember what happened last time? He's like, of course, yes, last time. Absent-minded professors.
He read his journal in the bath.
Apparently, or something. Like, I never got that back. But I wonder, I'm curious when now the Absent-Minded Professor came out.
That was 60s, I think. Mid 60s.
Okay.
Yeah. You're talking about the flubber?
Yeah. So was this a reference to that, like in a weird sideways way? I don't know. But
I don't.
He specifically said Absent-Minded Professor.
That's hilarious.
Okay.
I'm going to find out.
So they're talking, and he's like, you know a lot about this. And he's like, yes.
1961, by the way. So right around this time.
Oh,
maybe they got a scoop on it.
Maybe it was in like, oh, I know what we'll call it, or what we'll theme it on. So he talks about this. The diary, by the way, is Major Hugh Skelton, and it's a diary that he reads from. So anyway,
it'd be a lot cooler if his name was Major Huge Skeleton.
That's what I thought. I just kept thinking, okay, skeleton. Remember, skeletons.
Because they have those big Halloween Express giant and Home Depot giant skeletons now.
They don't flop their arms. They should. Yeah. They should make them like that.
Just call those Major Huge Skeletons.
Which, by the way, if you're a child of our generation, do you remember watching and seeing ads in like Saturday and Sunday afternoon for Red Skelton? The like performances he would do. Look him up, folks. He was an old performer who did like almost like vaudeville piano jokes and stuff like that, and all kinds of stuff. Very interesting. Anyway, Red Skelton.
Did you think of the Red Skull when you think about Red Skelton?
No, but I do think of a red skeleton, and I was like, oh, that's cool. I'm like, oh, he just is a guy who's a comedian. Okay, wow.
Yeah.
That's less cool.
It was a little disappointing as a kid.
When you want to see a living red skeleton.
Yeah.
But, bit
of a letdown.
You move on. Yeah.
Vaudeville comedian.
Then become a horror podcaster when you're later.
To cope.
Okay. Where are we? Okay. So Kittredge invites Jameson over. He's like, are you inviting me, or is Susanna? And it's like, I'm thinking, oh, his wife, Susanna? And he's like, oh, no, I'm inviting you this time. So they come over, and clips to him. This is Jameson now. It's evening time, and he's leaving his house. And you see him kind of leave his house and basically cross the street to go to this other professor's house. And as he does, there's an old lady, like in all dressed up, but like she's like in her, what looks like in her 70s, 80s, maybe.
Yeah, this is
maybe 90s.
Is Yoda that we were talking about before.
Yeah,
Estelle Winwood.
All apologies, Estelle Winwood. And she's just kind of looking from behind a tree, kind of skulking there. And she kind of reaches out as he walks away, but doesn't quite say anything or anything like that. She's just watching. And he, essentially crosses the street and gets to the other house. And he opens the door, gets in, and Susanna meets him and kind of embraces him. And I'm like, whoa, is there like an affair going on here? This is weird. And Kittredge, the professor, comes out, and he's got this kind of look on his face, and he's got like a apron on because he's been cooking or
And
something.
he's got them big booty pants on that go up to your armpits.
He's got like the front butt. Yeah, exactly.
The most harmless pant configuration ever known to man. It renders you completely sexless and unthreatening.
Which he kind of alludes to later, which is interesting, but this is all kind of interplayed with that. So at first I was like, oh, are they like having an affair or something? Like, this is weird. And comes out and he's like embracing her. And I'm reading this entirely wrong because Kittredge is like, so-and-so with my daughter. And I was like, oh, that's his daughter, not his wife. Okay.
It's interesting to me that you thought she was his wife at any point, but like it also speaks to something interesting because as old as he is, as you know, the character is compared to his daughter, the one who's actually dating his daughter is way older.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it made me think of that whole formula of there's
foreshadowing.
Like what's the formula? Is it half your age plus 7 or whatever? There was some sort of like formula for figuring out the acceptable age gap in a relationship.
Oh, I don't know that one.
Somebody it's like I think it's a new thing in the zeitgeist. I just recently started hearing it, but
interesting.
It was like something like half your age plus a number. I can't remember exactly what. But they break this way. They totally annihilate that in this.
Oh yeah. As we'll see momentarily. So, basically, the daughter is studying for her doctorate, right? And the professor is gonna hang out with Jameson, and so they go back to their chess game. Clearly, they've known each other for quite a while. This is very familiar, and like the father, she's very much. The daughter is very much under the father's thumb. Like he's like, no, young lady, you have to go study for your doctorate. Like, okay, well, but she goes up and studies, and the two men go and play some chess with their pipe, and it's kind of casually brought up by Kittredge. He starts asking questions like, so tell me about some things, you know, that reference you made earlier. He's like, oh, look at that hand. So as Jameson reaches for a piece, Kittredge compares their hands, and he says, you know, your hand looks so different from mine. How old are you, Walter? And Walter's like, I think he says 44.
Yeah.
And Sam goes, well, that's funny because when you applied to be a professor, you said you were 39, and that was, and he lists some number off, which I probably 12 years ago,
or 12.
Yeah. And he's like, so that would make you 51. And Walter's like, oh, I don't know.
So I'm like, 51.
He's like, and I look this different, and you don't look different at all, right? And at one point, they go back and forth, and he's like, how old are you? And he's like, oh, you know, whatever. He kind of plays it off.
Age ain't nothing but a number, honey.
Look, man, I just want to marry your wife. Or your daughter, not your wife. So Kittredge won't let it go, though. He's being very casual about it, but he goes over and he's like, you know, I have this collection of Civil War photos from Matthew Brady. And he's like, and I was looking at it the other day based on the story you told.
Looking at these photos the other day.
Yeah, exactly.
Went full letter Kenny.
Look here. I found something here that you might want to take a look at. A little suspicious. And he's got a magnifying glass, and he brings it over, and he's like, oh, this is, you know, Tecumseh Sherman's, William Tecumseh Sherman's direct reports. And he pulls out the magnifying glass, and he's like, did you have a grandfather in the Civil War? And again, Jameson's like, no. But you can tell the look on his face. He's being very chill, very relaxed, but still very focused. And Kittredge brings it over, and he's like, look, you know, this is a dead giveaway. You've got the ring, you've got the mole. How old are you? And then
he says, I'm so
Jameson,
old.
He's like, so what's the deal? tell me the truth. Like, he's like, you wouldn't believe me. And he's like, no, I'll believe you. And so he tells Sam Kittredge, he's like, well, I'm old enough to have known this guy personally. And he points to a picture, a statue of Plato.
Yeah,
and
he's like the
well,
bust in his living room, conveniently, of
Yeah.
Plato.
just happens to be there. And he's like, that's over 2,000 years old. And he's like, yep. And so he never really says how old he actually is, but he's at least or more than 2,000 years old.
He's like, look, I saw Glenn Danzig in concert.
Before he went full weird Nazi stuff, it was
did
the
he
Misfits.
go Nazi stuff?
He did. I don't know. There's some allegations. Just digression.
I'm Googling that
I think
later.
it was it was either this, was it last week that you mentioned the Black Sun as an episode coming up? Okay, so.
Or yeah, the Midnight Sun.
Midnight Sun. Yeah, very, very small digression. Apparently, there's on some of Glenn Danzig's tour stuff, he has a black sun, which was a old runic kind of symbol, much like the swastika that was meant other stuff before, but then the Nazis took it and made it their own little thing. So the picture is like, well, some people could say, well, that's actually supposed to be just this old, kind of picture. And it's like, yeah, but it looks exactly like the way the Nazis used it. So, and that was on some tour stuff that Danzig had. And it's like behind a picture of him on this t-shirt. So anyway.
Interesting.
Yeah. He could be edgelording, which he's known for that. Right.
Yeah.
Or it could be something more sinister and I don't know, it gets gross. So, without getting into that, who knows? Where was I? Back to how old he is. Glenn Danzig.
How old is he?
Okay.
Sorry, that was my fault.
He's
so
right.
old.
Glenn Danzig, weird that way too. Yeah.
He's so old. Prompt you another one.
One more.
He's so old that he remembers when a crunchy taco was 35 cents at Taco Bell.
So again, he doesn't say how old he is, but he says he saw an alchemist. He was looking up at the stars, trying to figure out how to live longer. He wanted to live life more thoroughly. Felt like it was going by too fast. He talked to an alchemist, gave him a bunch of money, and he said he doesn't know what he was done to him, but when he went into a coma, and when he woke up, the alchemist was gone, and when he recovered, he noticed that his family and all that got older and he didn't. So
it's heavy.
So he starts talking about how, he's not like he's immune to injury, but he has not aged anymore. And he's like, you couldn't possibly have not gotten shot or gotten an accident since then. He's like, well, some people are lucky, He's like, that's just who I am. And so by chance, I have managed to survive. So they plant the seed of like, here, he can die, just that he hasn't because he's ageless. And he says that he's got a revolver in his desk drawer that he has not had the courage to use because he wants to end his life because he's been alive so long. Now, this is the one part of this episode where I feel like, again, for time, as we've discussed in the past, they have to kind of compress things. But he doesn't strike me in any other part of this as somebody who wants to die. He strikes me as, he's got this girl who he's engaged to. He's enjoys giving these lectures. Clearly, he's in class doing that. Like he's got a professorship. Like, I think he's kind of enjoying it. So maybe this is the duplicity of a character like this. You've been around for 2,000 years. Maybe you like. This is how you talk to people like, oh, no, I want to die. I'm not, but I'll marry your daughter. No, that's cool. And I'll, she'll get old and die and I won't, but
he
so
says
you can
it sucks,
see this,
but you move on, find another young lady. Wink.
So what's interesting is in drawing, Kittredge, the older professor, is talking about how old he's gotten in the last 12 years, and since they've known each other, and how young Jameson has stayed, and he's like, what is the secret? And so in this discussion, it comes out of like him saying, I want to die, but
I've changed
it's
my diaper 3 times since you've been here, and you haven't changed yours once. What gives?
look at this front butt. I poop on both sides now. Yeah, so so it's not pretty.
Poor
And
Sam.
it's interesting because as it goes along, Sam starts making the connection of like, okay, well, if you are this kind of immortal, you have no business marrying my daughter because she's just going to get old and die and watch you stay young. You should tell her the truth. And he's like, she won't believe you. So again, with the subtlety that is in these episodes, I think that this is like the mind games that Jameson has learned to play to cover his identity and keep himself alive.
That's interesting. Like, I like how deep your interpretation of that is.
Yeah, and it seems to be a reoccurring theme for me, at least, of a lot of these episodes, where it's like you could go surface and go, okay, well, it's all crammed in there because of the TV show, but like you could, and I like to think that Serling thought of it that way, of like, well, let's play it like this, and then if people reflect on the episode, they really get some depth to it. And it's like, oh,
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, it is thought. It's basically the definition of thought provoking. Yeah, it's like what if you live forever? It's a classic.
Right.
It's the classic theme. Eternal youth.
How would he behave? What would they do different?
Yeah.
So, realizing that Jameson's gonna, be around, he's like, you know what? No, you can't marry my daughter. And so then she comes down. She's like, what? I can't do what? And Jameson's like, your father thinks I'm too old for you. And he's like, I don't think you are. So let's get married tonight. And she's like, what? Yes, let's do it. And Kittredge's like, I'll tell her. And he's like, she won't believe you. It's like, ooh, that's cold. Like, your daughter won't believe her father.
You're going to an all-night place to get married.
Right? They're going to go to Vegas.
Yeah, I guess that's...
No, they don't say that.
You're like, what? I mean, a little bit, right? You got to be like, this is like a college town. I don't think they have a 24-hour wedding chapel or anything.
They're going to have to go somewhere.
Yeah.
And so... she runs up and she's making plans, and Sam's like, no, don't, you can't, I can't do anything. And so Jameson goes back to his house, crosses back over the street again, and goes in there, and he starts getting things ready, apparently, and he opens up his desk drawer, and we see the revolver there, and he picks it up and holds it to his temple, and then puts it back down, and we hear a voice, and it's this older lady who we saw lurking earlier, and she is referring to him as Tom. And he's like, I don't know who you are. And she's like, look into my eyes. You once told me how much you loved my eyes. And she's like, you know who I am. Stop playing around with this. And he's like, I don't know. I don't know who you are. He keeps pretending. And again, this could be another one of those depths where he's learned to, by default, deny anybody who has any idea that they might recognize that he's living forever.
Yeah, he's finished with people. We learned that he's not really a stand-up guy necessarily.
Yeah, he's been.
He bellyaches about watching people age, but you don't really, the part he doesn't seem to go on to say is watch them die. He does. Right. He leaves them.
Yeah.
When they get too old, he just leaves the people in his life behind, which is super cold.
Yeah. Well, and he moves on. He's just a user and exploiter like that. A parasite, one might say.
Mm-hmm.
And so eventually she's like, I know you. Stop, Tom, stop this. I saw the engagement notice in the paper, and you're going to leave her just like you left me. And so she's talking to him, and he finally kind of breaks down. He's like, Lorette, I'm sorry. So he does admit he does know her. And so, again, this is probably another level of that emotional manipulation where he falls on like her appeal and does the love bomb and is all sad and regretful. But she's like not having none of it. And she sees his gun, his pistol on the desk. And she's like, and he's like, no, I don't. And she's like, no, you're not going to do this to anybody else. So then it clips to the outside. We hear a bang, and Sam Kittredge from across the street hears it, and he runs out and goes to the house. And outside the house, we see her, the older lady, Lorette, kind of wrapped up in her stuff. And he's like, "What happened?" Sam Kittredge, the professor, and she just kind of looks at him and pulls up her shawl and runs away. And he goes inside and he sees that Walter is slowly like dying. He's kind of
Getting older,
talking real
right
slow
before his eyes.
Well, so this is the interesting part. Yeah. So as he starts to die, Kittredge, it looks as like, look at your it's, your hands. And we see Walter start to age through all of these years that he has not aged. And I thought it was actually a really pretty well done effect. There's even a spooky scene. So we see him do a couple of transitions as they clip back and forth, where his face gets more pale and they put on more makeup and he gets kind of more shivery, and he can't articulate his words as much. And, and on through all of this, he's aging and then he kind of falls over and he collapses on the ground. And he does this weird thing where he gets even older and his face is getting all crusty and aged. But then he kind of does this weird like seizure gurgling thing.
He does
which
the
was
death
really
rattle,
spooky. Yeah. And I imagine. Go ahead.
I was just saying it was very realistic at that point.
Yeah. And I imagine that audiences watching this may have been actually kind of disturbed by this, because this is spooky. This is probably what that kind of looks like. And so again, that realism. And it's around this time that Susanna realizes that something has gone wrong. She comes over and she's like, no, what's going on? What happened? And her father is like, no, don't come in, So he closes the doors behind and goes out to try and stop her. She says, no, let me see him. She opens the doors and he's like, he's gone, And at first I was like, he's gone. Oh, wait. It was he's gone as in like he left, like he's not around anymore. And she is like, wait, well, what's that? Why did he leave his clothes here? And we see his clothes all deflated, and there's like a white dust where his body was, almost like he's been disapparated or disintegrated.
Get the vacuum.
And so she's like, what's that on the floor? And the professor says, dust, only dust. And he escorts her back out. And we see somehow inside the house, the dust begin to blow away like a breeze. I don't know, that was weird. But the outro from Mr. Serling is last stop on a long journey, as yet another human being returns to the vast nothingness that is the beginning, and into the dust that is always the end. And there's no mention of the Twilight Zone.
Yeah. Because he's dead. He's not living on in the Twilight Zone. That character, our focal character, is gone. I think that's why he didn't say
He dead. He did.
He certainly did.
So very kind of spooky. It's implied at one point in the voiceover at the beginning that it's black magic. It's alchemy. So for those who aren't familiar with the phrase alchemy, there was at one point a whole profession of people trying to learn how to turn things into gold, and that was the whole point of it. But it was kind of the beginnings of that mystical transition from that into chemistry, that people learned how to do a lot of that sort of stuff.
Pharmaceuticals too.
Yeah. So kind of a cool episode. Kevin McCarthy really stands out as a subtle performance, but I think if you watch it and you are reading and watching for details, it feels pretty nuanced as somebody who is actively trying to deceive everybody around him.
Yeah. I'd love him as an actor. I'll watch him in anything.
Yeah.
He's solid as a rock.
Came out.
Do you remember what next week's episode is called?
It is People Are Alike All Over.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't ever remember seeing that episode. So, no idea what's going on with that.
Yeah, it's kind of one of the more sci-fi ones, if I remember correctly. like a body swap,
Nice.
or you get a younger. I don't remember. We'll see together.
We'll all watch it together next week on Zoned Out.